the 11th Pakistan International Mountain Film Festival. We're grateful to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Culture and Tourism Authority. We're grateful to Serena Hotels, and we're also grateful, most of all, to the Black Hole for hosting us today for this talk. So the theme of our festival is the Year of Thrushmere. But currently, as the background is set by this documentary that we've just witnessed, we'd like to talk a bit about the Year of the Glacier. This year was declared the Year of the Glacier by the UN, and the significance was that with the growing climate change challenges, glaciers around the world are melting, and it's creating a freshwater resource crisis. So we have just the right people today at this stage who are going to talk about it. Dr. Hassan Abbas is a hydrologist. He did his PhD in hydrogeology from Michigan State University. And he's a vocal voice on water resources, and particularly the way water resources are managed in Pakistan. Dr. Fozia Parveen is an environmental scientist, and she's the assistant professor at Agha University. And she is from Gilgit-Baltistan, and she is going to give us some perspective about the indigenous communities and the challenges that they are facing around glaciers. And Dr. Hashmi, last but not the least, is a glaciology expert, and he's a water security researcher. So I'd really like Dr. Hassan to start with you. Microphone is just over there. Break down the myths and tell the audience, and particularly the international audience, what glaciers within Pakistan really mean to the people of river Indus Basin, and what kind of challenges we're facing right now.
Okay, thank you for hosting this very important panel here in terms of glaciers. Glaciers are one of the most amazing things in hydrology, in water resources, and in the way our planet works. The climate of the entire planet is dependent on glaciers, and is in many ways, from jet streams in the north and environment of the South Pole to this third pole, which has the greatest glacial mass after the two poles in the world. These three systems are the systems of global significance in terms of climate, in terms of water resources, in terms of fresh water, and in terms of the amazing nature that these glaciers create. Glaciers by themselves are very tough environments to live. I mean, there's hardly any life forms which live in the glaciers. Yet the glaciers are the ones which support a large number of species which are dependent on the water which is released from the glaciers. Unfortunately, Pakistan has the maximum number of glaciers in the world compared to any country, yet we do not understand glaciers. Dr. Hashmi would correct me if I am wrong. I don't know of any university in Pakistan which is offering a program in glaciology, a full program in glaciology. There's very little research which is indigenous, which has evolved from the minds and from the universities and from the institutions of Pakistan about the glaciers of Pakistan. This is very unfortunate. Glaciers provide us the storage of water. Just in Hunza Valley, the glacial volume which is stored in the Hunza Valley glaciers is estimated about 800 million, 800 billion cubic meters. Now, what is 800 billion cubic meters of water stored in that glaciers? Indus, in one full year, brings about 200 million acre feet of water. 200 billion cubic meters of water. So just the Hunza Valley is 800. So just imagine the amount of water which is stored in these glaciers. And these glaciers are amazing because they regulate the Indus River system. Like no other river system in the world is as well regulated by glaciers as is done by Indus. Like for example, the monsoons, they are another phenomena. Monsoons, they are dependent on the evaporation from the oceans, from the Pacific, from the Indian Ocean, to some extent Arabian Sea and all. And they are dependent on various other factors. Sometimes we get very strong monsoons, sometimes the monsoons are not that strong. So they are intermittent. But glaciers, they always start melting after April or during April, and then the peak of melting happens somewhere in July. And that provides a lot of water to our rivers. So Indus is one river system in the world which can never ever run dry. Now these glaciers are not just currently supplying water to the Indus River system, they are responsible for formation of the rivers which flow down south in our plains. These plains are an outcome of the glacial phenomena which is happening up in the mountains, because glaciers are one of the strongest erosional forces on the planet. They can churn the mountains, they can cut the mountains, create valleys, actually grind the valleys, make them bigger as they move. And when they produce so much of debris, then they flow with the glacial melt down south. And this area, which is the land of 5 rivers, starting from in Pakistan, starting from Lahore and Sialkot and Jhelum, all the way down to Indus Delta. This area was once upon a time a sea. Geologically, it was a sea. Geologists call it Tethys Sea. It was filled with the debris which was brought in by the glacial water, and all these Indus plains have been made. So these plains have been created by glaciers after filling up a sea. So this is the kind of force and the mechanism that these glaciers are providing us. And those 5 rivers are now the lifeline of Pakistan. They are still being fed with glaciers. They are still in the making. All the way to Indus Delta, it is still in the making. The process has not stopped. In a human's lifetime, it is like a snapshot. But over millions of years, this process has created all this landscape. So that understanding is very important for the people of Pakistan. I think this kind of teaching should start from the first and second grade of our students. But unfortunately, nobody knows about it. Nobody cares about it. This is the most important thing, which is the lifeline of Pakistan. And these glaciers have made this landscape, and consequently all the civilizations, not just the ones who are living up in the mountains, but all the way to Indus Delta. Everyone is dependent on glaciers. And we should understand our glaciers.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hassan, for a very comprehensive explanation of what the glacial ecosystem stands for. But before we go to the particular subject of this year being declared as the year of the glacier and the science of the glacier melting, I'd first like to talk to Dr. Fozia Parveen about the situation that the indigenous communities are facing as we speak. 2025 was a year when several flash floods were actually witnessed in the Giza Valley. We saw a lot of flash flood destruction in Bonaire, in Swat district. So I'd like you to talk about what the communities are going through, and if there are any adaptations that they're following in terms of mitigating the GLOF risk. Thanks.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come and speak here. So I'll maybe quote a couple of examples from this year alone. So you all must have seen the case of Roshan Talidas, where the entire village washed away because of a GLOF, and this GLOF happened very late at night. And thankfully, a local person was in the pasture. They had signal somewhere on the top, and there was a 30-minute time difference between them calling and the entire village being washed away, and people got rescued because of that one phone call. And there's another event that I've constantly been reflecting upon, thinking livestock management, pastures, taking our livestock to the pasture is a very old practice. We're continuously losing it. So every village now has a few people left who manage livestock. So if these 3 or 4 people had not taken the livestock to the pastures, and if they had not seen this human early warning, and therefore technology, of course, added to it because they called as many people as they could and said, just leave the village as soon as possible. And then the villagers, of course, called them back saying, we are, after 30 minutes, that we are safe. Thank you for the call, don't be worried, and so on. So that is one. And I was constantly thinking, what if that person was not there? What if they had not called? What stories, what horrific stories would have to see? Of course, there are still stories that impact us, that upset us. People like me, to whom these people are my people. So they're at the moment in this harsh winter in the tents, still relying on a lot of, of course, their life, their sanitation, their hygiene, their security, their privacy. Everything is compromised alongside the harsh conditions that are there. So that is one case. And the other is, so in this case, for example, it's quite known. So in climate science, we also now look at, what is known, what is unknown, what is unknown known, and so on, and unknown, etc. as well. So in this case, you're living right under the glacier, there is a GLOF. So it in a way, it is anticipated, although it is not anticipated. There is another case that happened in Gilgit city, in the Nior, where we unfortunately lost 9 volunteers who were trying to fix the channel. That again, we lost because there was a higher flow from the Nala, or from the stream. And that is the lifeline. So when we say lifeline, I really want people to understand these are not just statements, So once their drinking water and the irrigation water and the channel was compromised or destroyed, these people waited for 3 weeks. And the Nior is sort of the food basket of Gilgit city, and their entire income comes from the agriculture, and that channel not fixing meant their income for the year is gone. So people, so for example, if as an outsider Gilgit, I would have said, pagal hai, why would they go there? Are they crazy? But it was a do or die situation. So do you live without all of that income, without all of that security? Or do you go and fix this channel yourself? So they took it upon themselves. They went, of course, after asking all the agencies. Ultimately, when they were trying to fix it at 1 a.m., around 1 a.m., a slide hit them. And now we lost 9 volunteers. And again, these are things, one where I am really happy that lives were saved. One where I really get upset that, if I could go and rewind one event and cancel it, I'd probably cancel this event. A lot of things have happened, but people have been rescued. And as you know, in Baltistan, in many other parts of Gilgit-Baltistan right now, people are living in tents. And if you've not been to Gilgit-Baltistan, you would not know how harsh the winters are. And so from a humanistic perspective, I think as someone who understands both the science and the geography and how people are impacted, these are really the lived experiences of people. It's way more than just plain statements saying these are our lifelines, or we are living in the terrible conditions, or it's difficult, or we don't have homes anymore, or there are so many people, like I said, who are living in tents. And for me, I want to forget it in my day-to-day lives that there are a lot of people in GB who are currently living in the tents. just because, unfortunately, that is the reality that we have to live with every summer now, and now extending to the winters because entire homes are washed away. But I'll stop here because I want the conversation to flow.
That's right. But if you could kindly expand a little on the adaptations, any sustainable adaptations that they're,
How do we adapt?
Yeah.
So I think generally these terminologies, when they're used, we both with the early warning and technology, everything you see in the rooms where technology is talked about, and conferences where big papers and findings are talked about, and early warning systems are talked about. So almost every event you go to, people talk about how many early warning systems they have installed. So how come not in a single event that has happened this year, any early warning system was successful except for the human technology intervention, where technology came to the aid, but the human was involved in it. So how do people live, or how have people learned to live with it? It's like everything else. It's reactive resilience. It's we did not know this will flood. We are now replaced. So how do we live? We live in tents, we live in displacements, and we live for as long as someone provides us a shed and so on. So adaptation is very good on paper. It's very good when I teach it in my climate change class on how to build these resilient infrastructures and green buildings. But to be honest, the people are just living as events are happening. So there's no theorized book version of how people are adapting to it. They're just living as events are happening. And in terms of the infrastructure being ready, in terms of the economic infrastructure being ready, I think we're far, far behind being ready for the events that we're seeing.
Thanks for elaborating. Now I'll move to Dr. Zia Hashmi. And Dr. Zia, if you could sort of break down for the audience what the year of the glacier, when it was declared, what was the significance of that? And if you could, touch a little upon the science of glacier melting, where the world is headed, what that means for Pakistan in the future, and how would you like to elaborate on that?
Thank you. I'm really happy to have this opportunity to speak with the audience and just share a few scientific thoughts on the glaciers, which Dr. Hassan Abbas has rightly actually explained that how the glaciers are important for a region like Pakistan, or this all the Himalayan countries, especially Pakistan, because if we connect it with the vulnerability of the communities, as Dr. Fozia talked about, so it shows that glaciers are the highly significant component of the water resources that we have in Pakistan. For the Indus River, I mean, uniquely, if we compare Indus with all the major rivers in this whole bigger region, surprisingly, even there are rivers which are bigger than Indus in terms of flows, annual flows, but their dependence on glaciers is far less than the Indus. I mean, different scientific studies estimate and say that for Indus, the dependence on glacier melt is in the range of 40 to 60%. You see, more than 50% of flow almost is coming from the glacial melt. And also, I mean, starting from 2005, when the famous Professor Ken Hewitt, who first coined the term Karakoram anomaly, and it was not just one statement, it was based on his last 30 years eyewitnessing Karakoram glaciers. He used to have like annual visits to Karakoram glaciers, and he was a known geologist and glaciologist. So he actually explored and found that the glaciers, especially in the central Karakoram region, are behaving anomalously if we compare them with the other glaciers in any part of the world. And soon after that, I mean, people started to explore it further, and then there were many studies that came out, and they confirmed that yes, Karakoram Glacier behavior or their response to climate change is anomalous, and most of the glaciers in the Karakoram region are either stable or growing, and which we at that time thought as good news, or maybe something we should relax. And I mean, there are no threats to glaciers in Pakistan, maybe at least in the long term. But very recently, new studies have shown that Karakoram anomaly is no more. I mean, even the Karakoram glaciers have started to melt at rates which are comparable with other in many other parts, and now we cannot say that most of the glaciers in Karakoram are stable. So, I mean, I don't want to actually portray a very bleak or sad picture of water resources and glaciers in Pakistan, but I think we should believe in science, and we should actually act according to the scientific findings. And also, recently I came across a very fresh study that published in Nature Climate Change, and it was basically a global analysis of glaciers in terms of the number of glaciers vanishing if we go in time in like next decades, and under different climate change scenarios. The 4 climate change scenarios which are normally being followed these days, especially after the famous Paris Agreement that was signed in 2015. We know that there are 2 global warming targets set by the Paris Agreement, the 1.5 degree and 2 degrees. I mean, 1.5 degree looks very tough. It requires very high level of ambitions, but there was a provision that if not 1.5, we must actually restrict global warming below 2 degrees centigrade. And then the third scenario is, which we call that, if we continue acting with the current level of ambitions which globally has been actually put forward, then we might end up with around 2.7 degree temperature increase by the end of the century. And obviously the worst case scenario is we would end up around 4 degrees centigrade temperature rise by the end of the century. So based on these 4 scenarios, when a very capable team of scientists, they actually explored the future of glaciers around the globe, including this high mountain Asia. And they found, I would also only talk about high mountain Asia at this point, and if someone is interested for any other region, we can then maybe discuss it later on, that for high mountain Asia, under the worst case scenario, by the end of 21st century, we may lose 80% of the glaciers. And even the 1.5 degree scenario, by the end of, it says that by the end of the 21st century, we may lose up to 40% of the glaciers in this high mountain Asia region. So you see, we may say that this is the range, like 40 to 80% of the glaciers. It can be somewhere in between, but this is how future is going to unfold based on the current level of ambitions and the current state of affairs in terms of the actions. And another interesting thing which I came across in Pakistan, we know whoever is interested about the mountainous cultures and the glacier related cultures in Pakistan, we have heard about glacier marriages. So I mean, it still exists in our mountainous communities, glacier marriages. But a new term has now been introduced, is glacier funerals. Now, in more than one countries, officially, I mean, including Switzerland and Nepal and Iceland, glacier funerals have been actually were held over there, and because now we are every day we are seeing vanishing glaciers. I mean, there are glaciers which were there, but they are no more. So I mean, as I said, that in terms of water resources of Pakistan, these glaciers are lifeline. I mean, without the meltwater coming from the glaciers, we cannot sustain our rivers, especially the main Indus River. And if there is slight disruption in the Indus River flows, it will have significant implications for the water use downstreams. Especially, we know that agriculture sector of Pakistan is using more than 80% of the water that the surface flow which is coming through along the rivers, and then it is being distributed through canals and distributaries. So I feel, I mean, as I said, that globally the glaciers are under threat. So this is obviously the reason that we need more focus on glaciers. It's not only Pakistan, but there are many other countries who are highly dependent on glaciers, not in terms of, if not in terms of the water availability, in terms of tourism. These glaciers have are cultural heritage sites. They have cultural linkages. There are communities which are dependent on these glaciers. As Dr. Fozia mentioned, that in Pakistan, we see that there are more and more glacier-related hazards that are going on. I mean, although the hazards related to glaciers are actually not new, we cannot say that climate change has caused these glacial hazards to happen in this region. These hazards, these I mean disasters related to glaciers have been happening in this region for centuries. But the thing is that their intensity and their frequency has increased. In a single year, 2022, there were more than 20 GLOF events that were actually reported. So, if we consider all these things, I mean, there is no way then to actually focus on what is happening to glaciers. Unfortunately, Dr. Abbas rightly said that research in glaciology, I am also, I mean, you guys call me glaciologist, but I don't consider myself as a glaciologist. I am basically a water scientist or water research engineer.
We refer to you as glaciology expert, not exactly glaciologist, like very technical.
Because I never actually got the basic training of glaciology. It was just out of my interest, and also my 20 years of service in Pakistan, in which I had close interactions with the glaciers and all these things. So I think that I close this statement by saying that glaciers are the lifeline of Pakistan even before Indus is. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zia. I'd like to move the conversation back to Dr. Hassan, particularly in the context that what are the policy gaps? We talk a lot about the climate change policy, the National Glacier Protection and Resilience Framework, and particularly vis-a-vis the findings, the outcomes of COP30. Where do you believe, we talk a lot about early warning system, and the GLOF2 project also came under some criticism. Where is the gap, and where are we lacking, and what needs to be done to improve these systems. And you can also talk a little about the larger, focus on the kind of focus that we have on our larger water and irrigation system, and the focus on the large dams, the focus on the big dams. But I'd first like you to talk about the glacier protection policy gaps.
You can't protect a glacier. Glacier is such a large beast that you can't do anything about it. Like you are talking about melting glaciers, I have the experience of working in one of the largest post-glacial landscape of the world, which is basically the 5 Great Lakes between US and Canada. That's a post-glacial landscape. And I learned more about glaciers in that part of the world than in Pakistan, unfortunately. I have not worked in glaciers in Pakistan. And there, what we see is that how a post-glacial landscape looks like. Like about 10 to 12,000 years ago, those Great Lakes region, that was covered under 1 mile tall or thick sheet of ice. And the way the glaciers, they move and then they melt, and what kind of landscape they leave behind. It is amazing. And I have seen some kind of landscape similar to in the Great Lakes region. I've seen it in our mountains as well. One of the things that when you have very thick volume of ice sitting on the surface of the earth, which is basically rocks and regolith, it is pressing it down through its weight. Similarly, our valley glaciers, they are pressing those mountains with their weight. And underneath the mountains, there are those tectonic forces which are trying to lift these mountains. Now, this is a very interesting landscape, by the way. That's why I say our glaciers are so amazing. And the landscape by itself is so amazing. This is that tectonic action which is lifting these mountains, trying to lift these mountains up. And then there are glaciers which are trying to press it down. And then with every monsoon event, every summer glacial melting, the lot of debris are eroded and flown down into the plains. And all this thing has a net rise. Your mountains are rising by about 2 centimeters a year, which is a lot compared to these mountains. But given the fact that glaciers are suppressing it, they are actually suppressing your earthquakes. Because what is causing an earthquake? It is the tectonic forces which are deep into the mantle of the earth, which are trying to push these mountains up. Glaciers are pressing it down. If glaciers are melting, we are going to have more earthquakes or larger earthquakes. So glaciers are not just performing one function. And if anything is happening to glaciers, really we can't do anything. We just can't do anything about that. Glacier is very, very big beast. So any policy thing, the only thing that can help the within the policy wording and stuff is adaptation. Learn to adapt. And learning to adapt, as I said earlier, that glaciers are a very harsh landscape. People who are close to glaciers, they feel it how harsh they are. The closer you get, the harsher the living conditions become. And those people who are living closer to glaciers, they are adapted. And they have a lot of indigenous knowledge. And that indigenous knowledge must be recorded in an organized and a systematic manner. Because before people forget what their elders knew about the movement of glaciers, the movement of ice and rocks with the glaciers, those should be recorded. And that is why, once again, I would emphasize as part of policy that we should put more and more children and youngsters to learn about how the glaciers work. And the glaciers will keep on either the Karakoram anomaly or no Karakoram anomaly. Either they are melting or they are advancing. They are retreating or they are advancing. Our children our youth must learn to understand it. Maybe we are at that stage of our life that maybe next 20 years or at best 30 years, we won't be here. People of my age won't be here anymore. But the consequences that this glacial melting is going to have would be dealt with the youth, the children who are being born now, or who are in the schools now, or in the colleges and universities now. So it is very important that they should understand it better. And then, as you mentioned, that our irrigation system and everything is dependent on these glaciers. Unfortunately, our irrigation system, when it was conceived, the science was the science about glaciers and understanding about hydrology was kind of in its infancy compared to if we say it's adult now, then at that time it was in its infancy. So whatever plans, whatever designs, whatever grand projects, mega projects were conceived at that time, they were blind to the complete picture. Not that we have a complete picture now, we still have to learn a lot, but we know far better than what people knew in 1850s when the first mega projects on canals and river diversions started taking place. We forgot that the glaciers are connected to the delta. Indus Delta was advancing delta. Glaciers were bringing more material, soil and debris to the delta than sea could erode them. And this delta was an advancing delta. But then we thought we can conquer nature. We thought we can build the dams and stop the rivers from flowing. If you know a little bit of geology and little bit of glaciology, and you walk in the mountains, you will find out that 10,000 years ago, the last ice age, the glaciers were not where they are today, but the valleys which are now inhabited by people, those valleys were full of glacial ice. And from there, the glaciers have retreated. You can identify the typical features of retreated glaciers like moraines, lateral moraines, end moraines, errates in the mountains. There are so many glacial features that you can see post-glacial landscape which are in your mountains, which can tell you where these glaciers were like 10,000 years ago or so, or in the last glaciation. And now that the glaciers are retreating, they will create more of those features in the mountains. And if you see those inhabited areas in the mountains, they are almost invariably on the alluvial fans which are coming out of a narrow valley. It just spans out wide, and that is where people are living. And that fan, it has been created as a post-glacial landscape, because that valley that you see from where a river is flowing was not a valley from where a river was flowing. It was a valley filled with a glacier. So this mechanism of glacial advancing and glacial retreating, it's a continuous process. It is just the problem is that it's the cycle is so long that it spreads not in centuries but in millions of years. That these millions of years the glaciers are advancing, and these millions of years the glaciers are retreating. So we should know how these glaciers work, and all we can do about glaciers, at least that's my understanding so far, all we can do is learn how the glaciers work and adapt accordingly.
Thank you, sir. I'll just like to have a closing statement by Dr. Fozia and then Dr. Hashmi, but very brief in terms of like your recommendations on how the community resilience can be made, or if there are any policy recommendations that we have, please.
because I think about this a lot. I was actually currently working on a chapter trying to list all the indigenous systems that we had, from how we diverted the water and then used gravity, the cool management. So how these irrigation channels were built locally long time ago by the locals to feed our fields, and so on, to how seeds were stored, to how homes were built, what kind of materials were used, where homes were built, how food was stored, how food was stored for winters, and so on. So there's plenty of information, and I can go on and on about it, so I'll not go on and on about it. But as I was drafting this chapter, I was thinking about what is most indigenous, I think, to the mountain communities is our community infrastructure. And I think this is very related to all the mountain communities, that somehow people living in the mountain communities are more closely knit. And so everyone is there for one another. And I think I would consider our mountain communities' knittedness, close knittedness, as our biggest culture of indigenousness. Because whatever happens, people are there, we come to each other's rescue. And like I said, for all of these events that have happened this year, communities have come to rescue one another. And at the moment, the top-down approach, so we know, so basically in terms of policy, you usually have a policy, then you come up with a plan, then there is a strategy. In the National Adaptation Plan, by the way, because I teach it to students, it's slightly well written than many other plans that our policymakers have written, because it also talks about how much money would we need. Now, where does it fail? It does not talk about where are we going to bring that money from. So if you're saying that we'll go to the UNFCCCs or the COPs and then ask for money, so your plan is then bogus, because what if no money comes to you? So I think in terms of adaptation, finding the finances and finding ways to bring these finances close to the communities. And I really think that because we at the bottom have been managing ourselves very well, the top down has to meet the bottom up somewhere, because the local NGOs are the second responders, the first responders are the community, and the last responders, unfortunately, is the government. So how do we make sure that the village has a development plan, the village has a climate adaptation plan, because the village knows, how they've been living and how they're living. So in the chapter, ultimately, I've made the recommendation that it should be because globally now research is showing how all of the intervention that has come top down, has been introduced top down, has failed everywhere. So Global North scholarship is also saying, go to communities, talk to them. The ideas should be co-produced. Communities should be prioritizing and I often give an example. I'm sorry, I'm extending this answer. So for example, a big project went to my village and they said, we're giving you this much money. This is the kind of work that we do. And they said, no, actually, we just need like few thousand PKR to fix our water pipe. And they said, no, but that is not a part of our project's mandate. So we're not going to do this for you, but we have all this money for you to do all the other things, which is why I think community coming to the center and heart of this and their basic needs being met is more important. And I really think it has to be bottom up, but the bottom up will fail without the top down. And the middle actors, of course, have to be there. And without emitting one, like removing one from the system, I really think that it has to be empowering the communities. With all the flaws that we might have, I still think we're the best custodians of nature and of ourselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zia. We're very short of time, so I'd like you to keep it very brief. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And as I earlier mentioned, that even at the current level of ambitions, we still may face a disappearance of glaciers up to 50%, which means that, as Dr. Hassan Abbas also said, there is no way to actually stop glaciers from melting. The only way is to adapt to what they are going to bring about. And they are going to bring about irreversible changes in our system. So even the adaptation is not very easy in regions like Pakistan, where we are always short of funds. People lack adaptation capacity, lack education, sometimes basic education. And but the thing is, which I would very quickly emphasize, is the involvement of communities, local communities, and the indigenous knowledge. I mean, I have because I'm short of time, so I cannot actually give you examples from around the world. But always, who is going to suffer should be actually heard, and I mean, they have been suffering, so they have something in their mind. So involve indigenous communities, indigenous knowledge, and this is how we are going to save our people. Thank you.
So thank you for joining us for the panel talk. I wish we had more time for any questions and answers, but I think we've learned enough from the experts. Please don't go anywhere after this. There's a movie at 8 called No Friends But the Mountains, Real Grit, from Australia. It's pretty exciting. Now His Excellency, the Ambassador of Switzerland, will come on stage and present some mementos to filmmakers. My name is Haroon Riaz. Thank you very much for being with us in this talk. Thank you.